What if fan favorite Hank Scorpio, the charming Bond-style supervillain and surprisingly supportive boss to Homer, had returned as the main antagonist in the Simpsons movie? And what if the entire film had been a full-blown musical, filled with original songs in the spirit of the show's most iconic numbers? Or what if, like the Flintstones movie, it was live action? Believe it or not, all of these things almost happened. So let's dive in and find out why these changes occurred, resulting in the movie we got, and also take a look at what could have been the Simpsons movie. The first attempt to make a Simpsons movie came after season 3, when James L. Brooks saw the completed episode Camp Krusty and suggested it could be extended into a feature film. The episode follows Bart and Lisa as they attend a summer camp run by the Krusty the Clown franchise, only to discover it's a poorly run, exploitative nightmare. The idea of turning it into a movie was quickly shut down by the show's writers, who pointed out that the episode barely met the minimum runtime for television, requiring them to stretch jokes and even add extra verses to the Camp Krusty song just to fill time. As writer Al Jean put it, if we can't make 18 minutes out of this episode, how are we supposed to make 80? Complicating things further, the episode was also slated to be the season 4 premiere, meaning a film adaptation would have left them without a strong season opener. Ultimately, the concept was abandoned, but it marked the beginning of long-running discussions about bringing The Simpsons to the big screen. At one point, Simpsons creator Matt Groening toyed with the idea of creating a Fantasia parody called Substasia. The concept would have mimicked the structure of the 1940s Disney classic, using a series of animated segments set to music while poking fun at Disney's signature animation style and characters. However, Groening ultimately abandoned the idea, realizing it would be too challenging to write a script for such an ambitious and abstract concept. There was even a suggestion to make the film a Treehouse of Horror anthology, consisting of multiple horror-themed segments in the style of the show's annual Halloween specials. However, the idea was never seriously pursued. After the release of the live-action Flintstones movie, many fans began to speculate whether The Simpsons might eventually get a similar big-screen treatment. Phil Hartman, the voice of Troy McClure, had expressed a strong desire to star in a live-action film centered around his character. He pitched the idea directly to showrunners Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein, who were enthusiastic about the concept. Weinstein even proposed potentially using the plot of the 1996 episode A Fish Called Selma, which follows McClure as he stages a sham marriage to boost his failing career. Sadly, the project never moved forward and was ultimately cancelled following Hartman's tragic death in '98, as the character of Troy McClure would be retired from the series. A few years later, after the show's cast secured new contracts that included the option to appear in a feature film, development on The Simpsons movie began in earnest. However, the producers struck a unique deal with Fox. They could halt production at any time if they felt the script wasn't strong enough. This arrangement gave the creative team the freedom to prioritize quality over deadlines, ensuring the film would only move forward if it met their standards. During the first brainstorming session for the movie, showrunner Mike Scully pitched a wild idea. Steven Spielberg, voiced by himself, would try to blow up Springfield to make room for a movie shoot with Tom Hanks, who coincidentally would later appear in the final film as himself. In the same session, Groening introduced a more grounded concept inspired by a real news story about pig waste management. He suggested Homer adopt a pet pig, but struggled with where to dispose of its droppings. The team gravitated toward the pig idea and blended it with the larger, catastrophic scope of the Spielberg pitch. Other early ideas included the family rescuing manatees, a concept that was eventually repurposed for the 2005 episode, The Bonfire of the Manatees, and a meta storyline where the Simpsons discover they're living in a TV show a la The Truman Show. However, Simpsons creator Matt Groening ultimately rejected this idea, believing the characters should never become aware of their own fame, though a similar concept was later used in The Simpsons game. The writers initially planned for Hank Scorpio, the fan favorite Bond-like villain from the 1996 episode You Only Move Twice, to return as the film's main antagonist. However, the writers eventually decided to create a new character, but still have it voiced by the same actor, Albert Brooks. The character would become Russ Cargill, the head of the EPA who masterminds the plan to trap Springfield under a dome and later destroy it entirely. However, the original version of Cargill was radically different, as he looked much closer to Milhouse's dad, Kirk Van Houten, pot-bellied, pear-shaped, and balding. Not only that, but his character was written to be wimpy, nebbish, and a downtrodden hard luck case. Brooks recorded extensive dialogue for this version of Cargill, but it quickly became clear something wasn't clicking. Normally quick to embrace a character and find the humor in even the smallest details, Brooks seemed unsure and uninspired, a rare occurrence for someone known for effortlessly mining comedy from almost anything. His lack of enthusiasm should have tipped off the team that they were heading in the wrong direction, but they didn't fully realize the extent of the problem until early test screenings revealed that the character was talking too slowly, came across as too depressed, and ultimately just wasn't funny. Realizing the approach wasn't working, the team redesigned Cargill with a stronger, more intimidating presence, complete with a sharp jawline, broad shoulders, and an assertive, upbeat energy, modeling his demeanor off of former Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld. Brooks returned to the role with renewed enthusiasm, delivering a faster, more dynamic performance that brought the character to life. With the new approach, he fully embraced the role, and his energized performance gave the team the confidence that they had finally found the right direction for Cargill. However, due to early production deadlines, promotional tie-ins like Burger King still featured the original version of Cargill, offering a glimpse into what might have been. At one stage in development, the movie was envisioned as a full-blown musical. However, as the team began inserting songs, they found themselves constantly interrupting them with dialogue to keep the audience from getting bored. Over time, the songs were trimmed down more and more, until they eventually scrapped the musical idea altogether. However, they still intended to include musical numbers in the film, as songs had long been a beloved staple of the series. Unfortunately, two of these songs would be cut. The first was a song about Alaska with music by David Stewart of the Eurythmics, and the film's original opening number, Springfield Saturday Night, which featured the townspeople partying and waking up hungover the next morning. Test audiences felt it didn't contribute to the story, leading to its removal. Coincidentally, while writing what would become the opening scene featuring a rock band being attacked after preaching about the environment, the team received a letter from Green Day expressing interest in appearing on the show. That moment of serendipity led to Green Day being cast as that band, though it took 18 months to finalize the deal. When Grandpa collapses in church and goes into a trance-like state, delivering cryptic warnings about things like Ipa and 1,000 Eyes, it was originally meant to happen to Marge. However, the filmmakers felt it just wasn't entertaining, and you just waited for it to be over. Plus, it required a lot of shouting, which was taxing on Marge's voice actor, Julie Kavner. As a result, they replaced Marge with Grandpa, which transformed the scene, making it both funnier and more on brand for both characters, since Grandpa has a history of eccentric behavior, and Marge, who observes it, is the only one that takes his vision seriously. The role of Lisa's love interest went through several revisions during development. Originally named Dexter, then Adrian, the character's design and personality were completely overhauled before becoming the Colin seen in the final film. At one point, the writers considered making Milhouse her love interest, but they ultimately scrapped the idea after realizing that general audiences weren't as aware of his long-standing crush on Lisa as they had assumed. While the idea of Homer adopting a pet pig was introduced early on, the pig's now iconic alter ego, Spider Pig, wasn't thought up until deep in production. During the scene where Lisa excitedly talks about a new boyfriend, producer David Merkin suggested Marge, fully engaged in the conversation, suddenly notices pig footprints on the ceiling. The punchline? Homer walking the pig across the ceiling, casually humming the Spider-Man theme. The absurdity of the moment cracked up the room, and Al Jean offhandedly called him the Amazing Spider Pig. What started as a throwaway gag quickly caught fire, eventually dominating the film's marketing campaign and becoming one of its most iconic jokes. Spider Pig almost appeared again in Homer's Epiphany dream sequence, swinging between totem poles in full Spider-Man gear, but by then the team felt the joke had run its course and chose to scale it back. At one point, the film included a brief scene where Homer was noticeably less kind to the pig, but it didn't sit well with test audiences. The moment, though small, had a surprisingly big impact, with viewers reacting negatively to Homer's behavior as his character likability on their test audience scores fell 10 points. The filmmakers quickly recognized the misstep and cut the scene entirely. Removing it made a significant difference, helping to preserve the balance between Homer's outrageous antics and the warmth that keeps him endearing. Over the film's end credits, Maggie utters her first word: sequel? Teasing the possibility of another big screen adventure. Before being bought by Disney, Fox had approached the writers about making a second film, and while nothing official has moved forward, a season 26 episode called The Man Who Came to Be Dinner that featured the Simpsons being taken by Kang and Kodos to Rigel 7 to be eaten was originally slated to air in season 24, before it was held back when it was considered as a possible movie idea. The episode ends with the aliens wiping the family's memories, an ending the writers felt would frustrate audiences if used in a movie, as it could make the film feel non canonical to the series. Ultimately, the writers abandoned adapting the episode into a movie, and stressed that if a sequel ever happens, it would need to be more than just a cash grab. It would have to be genuinely great. After all, it took nearly 2 decades for the first movie to arrive in theaters, so fans may have to wait a little longer for the next. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Bullets and Blockbusters for more great content.